Welcome to Week in Review. Thank you for allowing me to be able to analyze and share with you from a biblical worldview. You know, when I was growing up, I remember watching Looney Tunes cartoons, and it would always end with, you remember this? That's all, folks. Well, you know, I believe that God is saying that over many progressive, leftist-leaning, socialist, Democrat politicians today. And it's going to happen rapidly. And I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm telling you 10 reasons why we will soon see many of these progressive politicians removed. You know, in the Old Testament, there's an account of a king, Belshazzar, and maybe you remember in Daniel's time, and he was a blasphemous man, and he was in a drunken stupor at a feast and had all kinds of sacrilegious activity going on, and all of a sudden there was handwriting on the wall. Can you imagine how creepy and mysterious that would be? But when it came, they couldn't interpret it. The queen said, well, get Daniel in here. You know, he's a man of God, and well, he interpreted it. And what did he say to the king? He said to him basically this. He said, the days of your kingdom are ended. They've been numbered and it's over. And then he says, you have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Shortly thereafter, poof, he was gone. Now, Psalm 75 tells us that God will raise one up, bring one down. You know, make them high, make them low. And I believe we're going to be seeing that in this day. Now, these are very serious days. These are apocalyptic hours in which we're living. And when we talk about review and looking ahead, they blend together right now. And I want you to hear me on these 10 reasons. Now, there's 3 alternatives that we face, I believe, as a culture in America. Number 1, the return of the Lord. That's going to be a glorious event. And that is, I believe, approaching. That may be where we're headed. Number 2, the collapse of our civilization. You know, Arnold Toynbee wrote, after 20 years of study, the history of civilizations. And he pointed out 34, how they fell apart from within. Abe Lincoln said, America will never be destroyed from without, but how? From within. And so we're called to be salt, and we have to recognize it. And that's why we stand up. But that is an alternative, a collapse. And the third one is what I pray for. And this is why the foundation of everything I say is prayer and fasting. And that is what? A great awakening. My dear friend Lou Engle, he used to live 2 doors down from me. I've known him 40 years. He told me recently, and I love to imitate him a little bit because he's my buddy. But you know what he said? He said, if we don't see a great awakening, this nation is doomed. Does that sound like him? Well, he speaks from the heart prophetically. So what are these 10 reasons? Well, I'd say, first of all, number 1 is people are getting more and more increasingly disillusioned and disgusted by what they're seeing in the culture. And they're also getting disgusted by what they're seeing in disingenuous and hypocritical politicians. They're talking about socialism and wealth redistribution and share the wealth. Well, you know what? Let me show you on the screen here a little bit. Joe Biden, his home, one of his 3. About Michelle Obama and where they live. Martha's Vineyard? Yeah. And what did she tell us? Now, they're going to be soon billionaires. Now, because of this, number 1, I believe people are going to vote people out, and the midterms are rapidly approaching. The second reason we're going to see many of these progressives gone is because of Biden's incompetence. I'm not being hurtful or disrespectful, but I encourage you to read on Charisma News, WND, Intercessors for America, other places, my article on why he needs to resign. He can't do the job. He's in a diminished state, and you can see it right now, and it's sad. The article ends, by the way, talking about Dante's Inferno and why he wrote that, of a journey through hell and the various levels of hell. And what motivated him about 700 years ago in Florence, Italy, was he was seeing politicians that were corrupt, and they were fat cats and rich and getting rich. And he just decided they need to face consequences. So he wrote Dante's Inferno. I believe Mr. Biden is in a very dangerous state and also incompetent. Number 3 reason I think we're going to see a removal of many politicians and progressives is because of what? Well, thirdly, Afghanistan. We've seen, I've written, many others have, but this is an absolute abandonment of our mission and to the Afghan people. It's tragic. Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of England, he said this removal, what was done was imbecilic. Parliament in England, the German leader that'll take over after Merkel, they're all saying it. And liberal and leftist, even commentators, the New York Times. I'm going to put on the screen, what did Peggy Noonan? She didn't like Donald Trump, but recently this is what she wrote. Look at it. I'll be quiet. Read it. And our military. When we look at it, we say, how could this have happened? Well, maybe we've spent too much time in the military with, political correctness and all kinds of other politically correct ideologies being built in the military instead of focusing in on our mission, which is to defend this country and win wars. This is a national embarrassment, and Mr. Biden is the one that's responsible. I'll tell you, a fourth reason right now that politicians are going to be run out of office is because of the debacle on the border. We will have close to 1 million people coming into this country. They're not really being checked. Don't believe what you're hearing. They're sliding in. And as a result of it, the drug cartels are bringing in the drugs. Don't blame just the asylum seekers, but they're not being checked. Mr. Biden's telling us we have to have restrictions and all of this, but they're just coming in droves in cities, bringing the drugs. And that's why you see what's happening in cities. As the drugs go then to the youth and the drug gangs, crime escalates, and we have a humanitarian crisis, sex trafficking, rapes. It's the same thing in Afghanistan, and Mr. Biden is responsible, and politicians that stand with him. Another reason I believe we're going to see a removal of individuals is because of inflation. Do you know it's at a 20-year high? Now you might say, well, I don't really feel it. Well, you got your stimulus check, your goodie bag, but that's not going to last. And so what we're seeing, and you can Google this stuff, look what's happened to prices of lumber, of corn, of grocery prices. It's only increasing, and we're seeing a real throwback. It's deja vu to Jimmy Carter years. Now, I voted for him in 1976. I thought, he was born again, all that stuff. But you know what it was like? Listen to me. Listen, you know what inflation was? Under Trump, we didn't have any inflation. And if you keep it and you say, well, it's about 2%, whatever it is. You know what it was under Jimmy Carter? It was a disaster. And the misery index was the worst in history. Inflation was at 18 to 19%. And do you know what mortgage rates were? You say, well, I got mine at 2%. It was 14%. It was a disaster. Plus, Americans were held hostage in Iran. I mean, what was it? And we're seeing a return under this administration, and it's the Carter years all over again. But people are going to say enough is enough. Another thing that we're seeing right now is this, wokeism. Now, my dear friend Steve Strang, he's written a book on the cancel culture. And there's people saying, enough is enough. I'm fed up with this. And they're speaking up in school board meetings. I'm a member, 46 years, Intercessors for America board meeting. Our headquarters is in Leesburg, Virginia. And that little Mayberry town, it's kind of like you'd think, oh, here comes Andy Griffith and, Opie and Aunt Bee. And it's a small, but you know what? Now, get rid of this for the schools, the urinals. What? And men and women off the restrooms. This is wokeism. And folks, people are saying enough is enough. This is insanity, and it's getting to the place of absurdity, what's going on. A seventh reason we're going to see people removed that are progressive leftists is simply this. It's a departure time. Do you know that there are 8 Democrats that are saying they're not going to run again? And all you need really in the House is adding of 5, and all of a sudden the Republicans take back the House. That means what? Goodbye in terms of Nancy Pelosi, House, all of that. It can be a brand new day. I believe people are going to stand in, they're going to vote correctly now, and not just because I didn't like Donald Trump and his tweets. I'll give you another reason we're going to see progressives gone, and that is not just departures, but redistricting. Every 10 years after the census, as you probably know, we redistrict. And it's going to fall in many places in the favor of who? Republicans, conservatives, traditional people. And people are going to stand up and speak and get off the sidelines. Many pastors are repenting. They've got buyer's remorse for not speaking up or for speaking up, in some compromising way. It's a new day. I'll tell you another thing that we're seeing, and I'll tell you it's this. It's number 9, it's crime. People see explosive crime. Why? Well, defund the police. And we see again what's happened. And it's very dangerous with drugs and everything in cities. You know what Hitler did first thing when he was coming into power? He said, eliminate the police. They did not want police. And today we have crime escalating and false statistics. You know, blacks are being hunted by police. There are bad apples. There's bad apples that are ministers and teachers, and same thing with police. But you know that almost 90% of blacks who are shot, homicide victims, are shot by blacks. And you know, the African Americans, are about 14% of the population, but represent 44% of the homicides in this country. And I'll tell you the reason. I'm not going to go into it here, but its bottom line, I believe, is a breakdown in the family. And we see over 70% of blacks that are born babies. Guess what? They're born fatherless homes. There's no dad. So you don't have the strength, the authority, the discipline. That's a real issue that has to be addressed. People are tired of what they're seeing, and I believe they're going to vote that way, and they're going to bring things to a conclusion. I'll tell you one more thing is, you know what else? Is not only crime, but lastly, history. History is on the side of those really that are not in the White House when it comes to midterm elections. Did you know that? Usually the party in power in the White House loses, on the average, 25 seats. And so with that kind of equation, I'll tell you, progressive leftists that are running wild right now, they are in deep doo-doo. Not only that, but last election, there's a record number of women, traditional women, Republicans that won. African Americans and Hispanics voted in historic numbers for Mr. Trump. Why? Because they said the economy, and we were being blessed. And now we have an opportunity. And I say it's time to pray. I say it's time to say no more sitting on the sidelines. We're salt. We hold back decay. Who knows if you've come into the kingdom for a time such as this?